Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah, I think this could be a really cool show. The official premise is that it's supposed to be an alternate reality of the MCU. This isn't supposed to be the 616 universe version of Peter Parker. This is an alternate reality version of Peter Parker, and it's supposed to tell more of his origin story, which we didn't get with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. We kind of just skipped the origin story and then went straight into his first appearance in Civil War, where he's already had his powers for a year or so and is being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man before he gets recruited by Tony Stark. And in this version, it's supposed to be, instead of Tony Stark being his mentor, it's actually Norman Osborn as his mentor. So I think that'll be a really cool twist with all that. We haven't really seen Norman Osborn at all in the MCU. I know we got him in Spider-Man No Way Home with Willem Dafoe playing him again, but I know that was from the Tobey Maguire version of it. So we haven't really seen an MCU version of Norman Osborn. Even if it is animation, I think that's fine. Speaking of which, the series style is supposed to celebrate and pay homage to the original Spider-Man comic books back in the 1960s. So I think that's really cool. You know, there's been like photos that they shared at different expos and different cons and everything like that, showing the different characters, and definitely feels more like a 1960s animation style. And it's created by Jeff Trammell, and he's going to serve as the head writer and executive producer on the show. I know he's worked on a lot of other animated shows like Craig the Creek, so I think that can bring like a really fun aspect to this new Spider-Man show. And then as far as casting announcements, we have Hudson Thames as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and he actually played Spider-Man in the What If version of the character. We have Eugene Bird as Lonnie Lincoln, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock / Daredevil, so I think that could be really cool. I know we got that tie-in again in No Way Home with Matt Murdock in that movie playing a lawyer for Peter Parker, tying that in. I'm not sure how much he's going to be in it, but hopefully we get a decent amount of him. You know, I know he's going to pop up more again in Daredevil Born Again, but yeah, it'd be really cool to see an animated version of Daredevil. We also have Hugh Dancy as Otto Octavius. Again, you know, we got him in No Way Home, but yeah, it'd be cool again to see an animated version of Otto Octavius. And I know they're going to stick with the more comic accurate version of Otto Octavius, you know, like the yellow and the green suit and everything and the sunglasses. Carrie Waldron as Aunt May, Zena Robinson as Harry Osborn. And again, we haven't seen Harry Osborn in this version of the MCU, and we didn't see him also in No Way Home. So it'd be cool to see like what they're going to be doing with Norman Osborn, and then what the dynamic's going to be once Peter Parker finds out that Norman Osborn is his mentor. Are they going to kind of have the dynamic that they had with, you know, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man or with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, where they're kind of like friends, but also kind of like enemies at the same time, where they just can become friends? I think that'd be a really cool premise for a show as well. Grace Song as Miko Minoru from Runaways, and I haven't seen Runaways, but I heard it's actually, you know, a pretty good show, so it'd be cool to see that character from that show brought within the MCU again, just to kind of create more of this continuity, because I know it's been kind of a theme that's been going on with Marvel Phases 5 and 6, is that Marvel's now reacquiring all these different characters that they had to sell off back in the day to the different movie studios. So it's cool to see like all these different, like, you know, Fox characters, Sony characters, you know, Hulu characters, you know, back within the MCU, and Netflix characters, you know, with Matt Murdock, you know, and we'll get more to that with Daredevil Born Again. So yeah, it's cool to see these characters just brought within one universe, and yeah, just have more of that continuity and connection. And Paul F. Tompkins as Bentley Whitman, and supposedly you're supposed to get a bunch of other characters as well, including Doctor Strange, Amadeus Cho, Pearl Penguin, Jean Folkholt, Matt Gargan / Scorpion, Unicorn, Chameleon, Speed Demon, Tarantula, Rhino, Carmella Black, and Butane. And again, it's really cool to see these different characters that we've seen in different movies from the MCU in this kind of 1960s version, and seeing characters that we really haven't seen in the MCU, or just characters that we may have seen from like other different movies but not really comic accurate. So it'd be really cool to see like what becomes of them in this show. And then at San Diego Comic-Con in 2022, we got a bunch of different suits that were revealed for Spider-Man, including a homemade suit, kind of like what we saw in a brief glimpse in Civil War and then in Spider-Man Homecoming. And then apparently there's like a black suit and a Beetle suit and like all these different suits that we'll have showing Peter Parker's progression until he gets into the classic red and blue suit. And apparently we're supposed to get a second season as well called Spider-Man Sophomore Year. So we'll see how it goes with that. I know the original title for the show is supposed to be Spider-Man Freshman Year, and they changed it to Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So we'll see if they stick with that theme of the different years within high school for the second season. But yeah, I mean, maybe it'll just be called Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2. But I guess we'll see what happens when that season actually gets finished and developed. But yeah, overall, I love Spider-Man. I think it'd be really cool to see an alternate version of Spider-Man within the MCU, and yeah, see all the different, conflicts that he has with Norman Osborn and all these different characters and all these different villains that he faces. And we also got a bunch of new updates from the D23 Expo. It looks like there was a lot of footage shown of how Peter Parker was actually bit by the radioactive spider. It looks like it starts off with Peter Parker going to his first day of school, and then he meets with the character of Nico, and as he's talking with her, suddenly a portal opens up and Doctor Strange comes blasting out, fighting a version of the symbiote, which has a resemblance to Venom, so I think that'd be really cool. And apparently a spider from that dimension comes through the portal and then bites Peter, and then that's when he gets his powers. And another clip of the footage shows a relationship between Peter Parker and Norman Osborn, his new mentor. And Norman Osborn is going to be played by an actor named Coleman Domingo. And it looks like from the illustrations that Norman Osborn is actually going to be African American, as well as Harry Osborn. And it's cool that these two characters are played by African American actors. So I think that's really cool. Just get more diversity into the Peter Parker universe. And the fact that the creator is African American as well, it's really cool to see that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse influence on it. And apparently after the first clip of footage, they started playing the classic Spider-Man theme song, and then it kind of changed into like a rap song. So it's cool to see that influence there. And then going back to the second clip, it looks like Peter Parker is finally donning an early version of the Spider-Man suit, and he's going on different missions to fight all these different villains and all these different thugs. And Norman Osborn's being his man in the chair, so to speak. So I think that's really cool. Kind of like a reference to how Ned was in the Spider-Man Home trilogy, especially in Spider-Man Homecoming. So I think that's really funny. But yeah, just seeing all these different updates and announcements and hearing the description of all this footage that's happening gets me really excited. We actually got a really cool trailer for everything that's coming up in the world of Marvel for Disney Plus. And Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man had a couple clips that were shown. And yeah, the clips actually are really fun. You know, definitely shows the tone of like what they're going for. Definitely has that kind of 1960s comic book style animation to it. So I think that looks really cool. You know, definitely shows like the action and the humor and the characters that they're trying to go for. So yeah, you know, definitely gets me really excited. We also got confirmation that it's supposed to be coming out on January 29th. Previously, it was supposed to be announced that it was coming out in November, but I guess they just have so much going on, they decided to just push it to January, which yeah, it's totally fine. You know, maybe they just needed more time to, you know, work on animation, or that was just the best time to release it. But I'm sure it'll be worth it just because there's so much coming up in the world of Marvel. So, you know, to spread out is definitely a good call for sure. Earlier this month, Jeff Trammell was in an interview where he said he was really excited about exploring Peter Parker's mindset and how he's impacted by the different characters around him and that effect that has on his growth as Spider-Man. So I think that's really cool. He's really taken the time to explore who Peter Parker is, because I know we didn't really get too much of that in the MCU movies with Tom Holland. And in those movies, Peter Parker is more like Tony Stark Jr. So it'd be really cool to see how Peter Parker is more of a teenager and how his friends and his family and his enemies kind of impact him directly. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but Jeff Trammell was saying that Peter Parker's story in this universe doesn't have to be limited to one school year. So I guess that was him kind of hinting at Spider-Man's sophomore year and possibly junior year and senior year. So again, that'd be cool to explore more of Peter Parker as a high school student and see his journey throughout the 4 years of high school, as he's also trying to balance his life as being Spider-Man. He also said that he took specific inspiration from the Spectacular Spider-Man, the animated series that came out between 2008 and 2009. So I think that's really cool. I've only seen a little bit of the series, but from what I have seen, I really enjoyed it. And I think that can be like a perfect tone for what this new Spider-Man series could draw from. He also said that he wanted to use this series to approach familiar ideas and characters in a new way, which totally makes sense based on what I've been saying earlier about how we're seeing the classic Peter Parker in a completely new style and new tone. And the specific examples that he had were Norman Osborn as his mentor and Nico Minoru as his best friend. So I think that can be exciting. You know, like I was saying earlier about Norman Osborn being his mentor, will definitely be a lot of twists and turns in the story, especially since Norman Osborn ends up being the Green Goblin, at least in the original series. So it'll be interesting to see what Peter Parker's dynamic is with this new form of Norman Osborn, and if Norman Osborn is going to end up becoming the Green Goblin, or if he's just going to continue being his mentor, and seeing the kind of ramification it has as their relationship develops. And then on the flip side, with Nico Minoru being Peter Parker's best friend, because in the original series, Harry Osborn is his best friend, or Ned Leeds is his best friend, so it'll be interesting to see what Nico brings to the table. And like I said earlier, I haven't seen Runaways, but I've done some research on the character, and I know she's kind of like more like a goth personality, so it'll be interesting to see that kind of contrast with Peter Parker's kind of like nerdy, positive personality. So yeah, definitely think it can be interesting for sure. And then speaking of Norman Osborn, when they're trying to cast the role, they're really struggling to find an actor who kind of live up to Norman Osborn, and one of the crew members suggested Coleman Domingo, and Jeff Trammell said that that was a genius idea, and they approached Coleman immediately, and he was super excited about the idea. So I think that's really cool, and then especially since he's been nominated for an Oscar for Sing Sing, so that'll just bring even more credibility to the role. So it just makes me more excited to see what he brings to the table with Norman Osborn. And then as far as the animation, Marvel Studios Animation said that they didn't have an in-house style, so they were free to develop their own style. That was different from previous styles like What If and X-Men 97. They also wanted to avoid the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse style, which I was kind of talking about earlier about seeing kind of like those influence in. So that's why they wanted to pay more homage to the 1960s version of the comic books, specifically art from Steve Ditko and John Romita Sr. And Jeff Trammell described the series as kind of like a moving comic book, which they achieved through 3D cel-shaded animation provided by Polygon Pictures and CG. And Polygon was chosen because of the 2D animation look they achieved in other previous works. And Jeff Trammell said that Polygon was able to achieve their desired animation look while also keeping the characters alive and real without feeling stiff and mechanical. And Lee Romero serves as the lead character designer, along with comic book artists Chris Samney, Paulo Rivero, and Ethan Young. And Jeff Trammell praised Romero for modernizing the designs while also retaining the classic elements. And they really wanted to lean further into the classic comic book elements like Peter Parker's suits and some of the villains' costumes. And we also got a brand new poster and a brand new trailer. And starting off the poster, it definitely has that classic Spider-Man feel, like the classic comic book covers, but also having like its own style, which looks really cool. And then we got a brand new trailer, which looks amazing. No pun intended. Yeah, it definitely lives up to the promise of of what the creators were saying about being like a living, moving comic book. It definitely has those kind of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse feels to it, but I noticed they kind of emphasize like the lines around the characters to make it more cartoony, more comic booky. So that definitely looks really cool. And then it even has that kind of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse kind of tone to it too, where it really kind of emphasizes that Peter Parker is like a kid from Queens. And I really appreciate the fact that there's a lot of diversity in the cast. And kind of like what I was saying earlier, that they changed the races of the Osborns. So Harry and Norman Osborn are now African American. So that'd be really cool to see those kind of influences on the series itself. But yeah, there's just a lot of like humor, a lot of action, a lot of classic high school tropes and situations, especially with Peter Parker trying to balance his life as a high school student and as a superhero. So I'm really excited to see how they explore all that. And the music was really cool too. Again, like I was saying earlier, they kind of had like that hip hop spin on the classic Spider-Man theme song. So I'm definitely excited to hear more from that too. And lastly, the first 2 episodes are scheduled to release on January 29th. And they're doing something kind of unusual with the release schedule. The next 3 episodes will be dropping on February 5th. And then the next 3 episodes will be dropping on February 12th. And a writer named Chris Agger from comicbook.com was kind of theorizing that the reason why they're having this kind of unusual release schedule is so that it doesn't overlap with Daredevil Born Again, which totally makes sense because I know that Daredevil Born Again is probably like the most anticipated show of this year. So Marvel probably doesn't want any other shows kind of competing for that viewership. So I guess we're gonna have to clear our calendars for those days because we're gonna get 3 episodes at once. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, overall, I'm really excited for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It definitely looks really cool and fun and action-packed. And since it takes place in an alternate reality in the MCU, we don't really have to feel pressure of like, oh yeah, we need to see this like right before all these other movies and shows in Phase 5, so we can kind of take our time and just enjoy it for what it is. So yeah, I'm really excited for it and can't wait for it to drop on Disney Plus.